they are real stars because the deer here are habituated to people. So they don't run away. They're not tame. You can't pet them. If you see a deer, you're probably going to get a good look at it before it goes away. If you approach it, it'll move off. It's kind of cool to be around them. They're just really interesting.
I'm Chelsea Dalton, Environmental Sustainability Coordinator for the Environmental Affairs Office at UTM. Welcome to our Wild UTM series, where we're going to talk about all the different aspects of wildlife and nature at UTM. Today, we're going to be talking to you about our favorite UTM residents, the UTM deer.
I was attracted to UTM because of knowing there were deer here, and I always thought it was an interesting thing that there's these big animals on campus, but they're, not really shy of people. So I wanted to learn more about that kind of interaction with ecology and then how humans are involved.
Because they're cute and friendly. Like on campus, if you're like a meter away, they wouldn't mind. They'll still stand there and you could be so close to them.
So deer probably were well established in this area in the 1960s and 70s. I don't know when UTM was created, but I imagine there were deer here at that time. The number seems to have stabilized and has been probably between 30 and 40, 35 and 45. Most I've ever seen was around 35. Does are kind of like lionesses in the sense that they are very territorial. They stay in a particular region. So what you see on campus here are does and fawns most often. The bucks are more migratory.
So in the summer, usually what will happen is on very hot days, they go into deep parts of the forest that are colder, since the forest has a lot of canopy cover, so it's more shady and it's cooler. They usually will nap in the afternoons, so you see them not really up and around, they're kind of lazy. But you'll find most activity with them in the evening, so like 6:30 is like a peak time. You'll see a lot of movement usually if it's a typical day for deer. And early in the morning. So those are the best, bets you're gonna have with it. If you're lucky, you'll see them even during a day. So as a student at UTM, we saw them in the afternoon. Sometimes they're usually eating, so they're just kind of trotting and eating and not really paying attention to people. But in those peak times in the morning and evening, you'll probably get them more active and they're kind of more in like a sprinting kind of running mood if they're scared. So it depends kind of what you're looking for. If you want to see them calm, probably afternoons if you can find them. If you want to see them more active, then in the evenings and the mornings. They do sleep all over and not just necessarily one spot. They will rest quite often in forests, especially if it's hot, and you'll see them lying down. In one of the sites, it's an open field grassy site. That's a site where there's beds. So there's these little kind of like nests, but they're actually large, kind of indentations in the grass, and that's where they lie down.
Well, there are two reasons why they congregate here in the winter. First of all, you have a good stand of pine trees, or spruce, or whatever they are, and you can see them around the property. That's what they need for protection against the winter. It's not the cold that kills deer, it's wind, so wind chill. So a deer can stand temperatures minus 35, 40 degrees, which we've had some days like that the past few winters, but they can't stand it if there's wind out. So they need to get beneath these trees, and pine trees, because they still have their leaves and needles, breaks up the wind. So deer will eat silage, which is the vegetation that's fallen from the trees, particularly maple leaves and whatever. But there is a sweetness to them. As they start to rot, the sugars come out, and it's a really good source of nutrients. So that's the fall food, and then acorns and whatnot. In winter, in a bad winter, they'll eat buds and twigs, and they'll scrape through and eat the leaves.
When there's a baby and a mom, usually, or multiple babies even, the mom will leave them in a forest or in a little bit of patchy grass or somewhere where they're kind of hidden, but they're still left alone. So in my research, we had a bunch of surveying days we did, and we almost stepped on one, not seeing it because it was so well protected and quiet, and we thought it was an abandoned orphan or something. But then we looked into how the moms will leave the baby sometimes. So that is something I did not know. I did not ever think that that's what they would do. So that was kind of cool to see.
It'd be a shame if people said, well, we got to get rid of the deer because we're getting Lyme disease here. That is not the case. In fact, you want to point the finger at the people that are bringing Lyme disease to UTM. Look at the dog owners, because it's every place that Lyme disease has turned up in the Toronto GTA area almost every time it is directly attributable to somebody taking their dog down to Long Point area or someplace where Lyme disease is established, and then bringing their dog back here and the ticks fall off. Not deer, it's dogs.
Right now it's not a risk for students on campus, so it was a good thing.
Their babies are probably as cute as any baby animal. They're big, doughy-eyed. The bucks are very regal looking. They're just magnificent animals. They can jump, 10 feet high if they need to. They're just a spectacular animal, and yet they're accessible to people.